Well, I know one thing, and I hope you edit this. Um, you know, I know one thing,
That
which
means
is
I'm
that
keeping it, by the way.
is that I want to be really good at my craft, and my
Uh,
craft requires hours of work.
you are now entering preFORM. Prepare to perform. A podcast created to explore the inner workings of high-profile performers. Conversations reveal what separates them from the average human. Buckle up. My next guest is an agent of change. Neha Uberoi has traversed the globe competing as a professional athlete. Even though she hung up the gear, her work has just begun. Neha is the CEO and co-founder of South Asians in Sports, the premier network of South Asian sports industry professionals. Her mission is to advocate for, promote, and educate professionals who work and play in the sports industry. So sit back and enjoy just a snapshot of her journey.
Well, I'm one of five girls. We are Indian American. I grew up with we're first generation Indian American. And I grew up with parents who really instilled in us a lot of pride in who we were, who we are, kind of just our background, and also in sort of dreaming and thinking big and taking risks and being comfortable with um not doing things that everyone else does, with kind of finding your own path. And that was not met with a lot of applause initially. In the South Asian community, I think it's very much a herd mentality. It's very much, especially in new immigrant mentality, is okay, put your head down, study hard, get the professional degree, get a job, get a house, build a foundation that way. But I think my father, he was one of eight children growing up in India. His parents
Wow.
and his siblings experienced partition in India, where they lost and had to completely uproot their lives several times just to survive. So I think that that was really instilled in my father. Also, a sense of pride. We're Punjabi, and Punjabis tend to be very into themselves and they're in the background. Excuse me, I just have to mute that. And I think growing up first generation American in New Jersey, in Princeton, New Jersey, we were probably one of four Indian families. Now there
Wow.
are so many more Asians, so many more, South Asian, Indian around. But I think it was really important for my parents to instill in us knowing where we came from, and how amazing our ancient heritage is. So I grew up, five sisters really grew up thinking like we were the shit, we were so cool. We
Still
were
are.
Indian, we were Hindu, we were also Sikh, we knew, the Vedas, like we just thought we were the shit. But as I grew older, I realized that a lot of my Indian American counterparts didn't feel that way about themselves.
Mm.
And I thought that was interesting. And my father, really, it was his vision and his passion to make his daughters athletes. To have five daughters as a South Asian male is not easy.
Mm.
You're supposed to have a son. You're supposed to do all the patriarchal things. And what I now that I'm a mother myself, I think I'm just so in awe of his grand vision and his courage and audacity to say, not only are my kids going to be athletes, we're going to try to make them professional athletes, you know. And
High aspirations.
yeah, as just big thinking. He's a risk taker, he's an entrepreneur, he's a serial entrepreneur. And he just knows how to think big,
Mm-hmm.
and to go for it. And I just think that that audacity as a new immigrant is just so cool. It's just so cool. So I think my mother, hats off to her for planting down the grounding and the roots, and kind of just instilling in us the constant reminder of that compass, the moral compass of knowing what is most important in life. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it was easy for my mom, but she was able to kind of instill those roots in a very motherly way, which was
Mm-hmm.
not overpowering, very distinct from how my father is. So I just appreciate that so much more now that I'm a parent myself. But yeah, so tennis really was, something driven by my father. We all played it. It was sort of like the lay of the law in the Uberoi household. You got to do Kuman and you got to do tennis. And there's no mistakes in Kuman forward, and there's no mistakes on your forehand. Okay.
What about
Um,
backhand?
we don't care about the backhand right now. It's
Okay.
all about Andre Agassi and his forehand. So 1990s Neha Uberoi. Just that's where we are.
Gotcha.
So that was the mantra in the house, and instilling in us this pride of who we are, Punjabi strong, all these things. When we got out, into the world of cutthroat junior tennis, when we moved to Florida, my family sacrificed a lot and moved my one of my elder sisters, Shika, and I to Florida to play in a tennis academy, a Saddlebrook Tennis
Wow.
Academy. We were in this jungle, where all the Eastern Europeans and all the South Americans and all the other white people that played the sport were there, um, trying to eat your lunch. And it
Yeah.
was a very rude awakening for skinny little Indian kids who
Mm.
needed to bulk up and to toughen up.
But you
And
had the
I think,
forehand.
yeah, exactly. You got to
So
work the forehand. And I think that really kind of shaped me as a fighter, someone who's competitive, someone who's, seen a lot from a young age and had to sacrifice a lot. My sister and I were training 6 to 7 hours a day, 6 days a week from a very young age. I was away from my family, from my parents. I had to study, when I was dog tired at the end of the day, and I still had to make A's because I'm Asian,
right.
so all of that was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of insane discipline. I mean, it was just wake up, practice, go to sleep, practice, homework, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And like TV was just, a little escape sometimes when our parents weren't home. So I think growing up like that um made the rest of my life easy. And when I say easy, it's just that I had so much discipline and I had the understanding of what it means to have delayed gratification that,
Mm.
when you return to the normal world or post athletic world, going to work for 9 a.m., it's easy. You
Yeah, it's
wake
kind
up,
of cush.
yeah, it's cush, kind of cush. There are other pain points, very painful to sit
Sure.
at a desk all day. But, the just sort of life happenings are very easy.
Mm.
And so I think I value that a lot now. Um, to be an elite athlete for it, it requires a lot of things to fall into place mentally, physically, your team, management, luck, all of those things. Um, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about, oh, well, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. We tried, we tried our best with what we had to make it,
Mm-hmm.
to really get to the top. And I would say I was almost there. Some people might say, hey, you made it. I would say I was almost there.
It's
Um,
all perception.
it's all perception. I'm learning that now. It's all perception. And, I think it's very clear to me what could have been done. differently to have gotten different results. But I think hindsight is always 2020.
Right. So these perspectives and the insight you gained all the way from childhood, driven by your father, and then you had the balancing act of the true north from the mother, which is, fantastic. And you get through into professional athletics at the elite level. Is this what drove you to develop your own platform, or was it something else that shifted your perspective away from sport and into this quote unquote corporate domain?
Um, is it okay if I just tell them to stop calling?
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's cool. Tell me, we said hello.
Hey, hi, I'm just on a call. Can I call you back in half an hour? Okay, thanks. Love you. Bye. They wouldn't have got, it was my husband wouldn't have gotten the hint. I already texted him, don't call, but he just didn't receive that.
I remember
Sorry
my first podcast. Come on, man.
you know, what I actually realized is that I think my true nature has overcome or kind of come out of the amount of, let me reframe this. I think that what I'm choosing to do now in my life is very much aligned with who I am at my core and my true values. And I think that being a competitive athlete, though I think I am naturally competitive, I don't know that that was something that was brought upon me. And what I'm doing now is chosen. And I
Hmm.
think the difference in those two things is probably the difference between having made it and not. What I'm trying to
Interesting.
say is the intrinsic motivation that I have now that's completely aligned with who I am as a person to do the things I'm doing now and the way I operate and the way I just, the perspective I have about what I do, I think
Hmm.
is a huge differentiator in my output. And I think if that had been applied to what I had done on the tennis court, I think I would have had better results.
Hmm.
I think. Um, I think all the pieces were there as an athlete. You can ask anyone who trained me, worked with me, competed against me. I think, 120-mile-per-hour serves, ripping forehands, you know,
Of course.
a beast. But I think the mental component that is so critical um, was faulting, not for any lack of anything, but rather because I think the source of the motivation was not authentic.
Mm.
And a lot of elite athletes talk about this, Rafael Nadal, Tiger Woods, a lot of them talk about that love for the game, that deep attachment, that knowing, that all knowing, that belief that's there. For it was never fully there for me. And I
Wow.
and I know why now. And that was a hard pill to swallow. Because as you grow up in a sport as an elite athlete, with all of the world looking at you and saying, oh, wow, you're an athlete. That's special. You're so special. You're doing this. You convince yourself, this is what I'm meant to do. This is who I'm supposed to be. But deep down, was this truly mine? Was it not? And yeah, there are athletes who have made it, who've been pressured by their parents and have still won gold medals or, won Olympics and things like that. That didn't happen for me. And I truly know it's because the pure intrinsic motivation wasn't there. Now, saying all that, what I do know about myself is, wow, I have a lot of discipline and willpower to keep doing things that I don't purely want to do. So when I left tennis and kind of moved forward, I had a reaction. I said, I don't want to spend another minute of my life doing something that I don't wholeheartedly want to do. Yeah, I
Mm.
know I have to study. I want to study. I want to complete my degree. I know there's parts of courses I won't like and things like that. But those are all kind of time sent, things that happen in seasons. I'm talking about the intentional day to day. How do I spend my time and my life? I don't want to spend another minute doing something I don't like. And I think that although I didn't know that was what I was feeling, but that sort of energy made kind of normal, not post tennis, post graduating life pretty difficult for me because I was in a lot of jobs that I didn't enjoy. I thought I would enjoy marketing. I didn't enjoy being on social media for, 10 hours a day. I didn't enjoy that. And that there was just no reserve left for me to kind of wait it out or buy my time and sit there for another year and take the
Mm-hmm.
bullshit that I was getting. And so I met with a lot of conflict again and again. And I kept trying to reflect, what is it? Am I just not meant to work in corporate life, or like, do I need to be an entrepreneur? And it caused a lot of grief, a lot of anxiety. I was transitioning out of athletics. My identity was in question, my self-worth. So many things are in flux at that time. I was in my mid 20s. And it kind of forced me to stop, to kind of just be still
Mm-hmm.
and to start listening, to really start listening to what the reactions were, what are the triggers, what am I trying to tell myself? And the more I kind of leaned into that and let that guide me, I think the path kind of became very clear. But there were a lot of um, social fears. I wanted to do social work. I felt like that was a place that I could combine clinical skills with the things that I love to do as a person. But I also felt like, well, I was a professional tennis player. People knew me. Social work is not a glorified profession.
Mm-hmm.
And it hindered my decision by like 2 or 3 years. I knew that was the path, but I kept ignoring it. And till this day, people think that, you went to business school. Like they just assume I'm in business because of what I project.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of the way I carry myself. But I have stopped kind of wondering, oh, why and what? Why am I this way? And what should I do? And started just leading with heart and values. What are my values? What is the heart telling me? And it's very hard to hear that for it. I mean, we're in a society that values so many things other than listening to your true north. And so
Extrinsically. Yep.
yeah, I really had to take a step back, and it was not easy. But I think one thing that kind of gave me courage and understanding is that I knew that once I found the direction, I had 20 years of hard work, sacrifice, discipline, and knowing that I could make it in whatever I choose to do. Like I
That's
can
right.
do it. And
Yep.
it was just about kind of finding what it was. Like I have no doubt that I will do well in whatever I want to do and whatever that well means for me. But I'm not scared of the work. I'm not scared of starting over.
Mm-hmm.
The ego in me was scared of being a beginner again, being not good at something again, being an intern in my 30s again. The
Yep.
ego in me, yes. And that's not easy. You suddenly are in one kind of category and then you move to another. But I think the sort of wise mind in Neha knew it was time to kind of just keep leading with that. And so I think that's kind of what prompted me with this platform, South Asians in Sports. It really started as my playground. It
Mm.
was a place where I could flex my entrepreneurial arm. I love starting things and initiating things and sort of that natural leadership quality that I have. It also married what my sister and I observed on the professional tour is just not seeing people who look like us in and around sports.
Mm-hmm.
Hosts, anchors, massage therapists, coaches. I think our experience would have been vastly different if people knew what Indian food was and
Mm.
didn't tell us that we couldn't be elite athletes eating our food, when now all the elite athletes are using Ayurveda and eating our food to,
Wow.
or just our body shape and size and the comparisons. And let's not even get into male coaches and that,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
impact. So I think that I truly believe that as a community, as a South Asian community, I feel like sports is that kind of final frontier for us in terms of um, really kind of coming into the world stage. I think we've done really well in medicine. I think we've done really well in tech, politics, even Hollywood. But for me, I truly believe sports and sports business is that final piece for us. And what I'm trying to do with South Asians in sports is to advocate for, educate, and kind of inspire people to choose sports as a career, whether that be play professional sports
Mm-hmm.
or work in professional sports. Use your graduate degrees, use your professional degrees in sports, because we need, more South Asians in the field. And so that's been what it is. And I think thanks to the Black Lives Matter movement in the last year and a half, there's been more attention to DE and I. Companies really are looking at, well, who are we hiring? Is it a real good business decision for us to actually be diverse? And what does that
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And so it's been a lot of fun to see us growing in the past 3 years from 10 members to 650 around the world. And there's so many more, but we're now becoming a community. And I'm really trying to create that network, that community for the next Neha who says, hey, I want to work here, or I want to work at the NBA, and can turn around and have people who can guide her there.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to be a doctor, I have a Rolodex of aunts and uncles and cousins and brothers who can help me with that.
Yeah.
But that's cannot be said for a lot of other professions that are more out of, obscure for our community. So that's sort of what the passion is for South Asian sports. And it marries, my athletic background, my kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and the piece of just kind of giving back and leading and, continuing to kind of be a leader in the space.
I love it, Neha. The platform seems like it has so much momentum behind it based off of everything you've shared with my listeners. My question for you is, where is it going? What is it going to look like in 5 years from now or even a decade down the road?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if
What's
you
your
had
main
asked,
vision?
yeah, I think if you had asked me last year, I think I would have had grander, bigger dreams for it. I think I now, realistically, I have two children, and they're very small, and it's also a completely free organization.
Uh,
It is a complete passion project, and it's really like my third kid. Uh, and so many times I say I should get paid for this. I should start charging for membership. Just to speak, completely clearly and
mm-hmm.
honestly with you. But at the end of the day, Ford, there are things sometimes that are just bigger than money.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Like
Absolutely.
there are just things that are more important than money sometimes. And sometimes when you monetize things, it dampens the effect you're trying to have and the social change you're trying to create. I think it muddles things. And I'm in a privileged position where I can dedicate some time to this and help it grow, where I don't need to monetize it.
Mm.
And so what my ultimate vision for South Asians in sports is to be completely irrelevant. And I say that because there are going to be so many South Asians working in sports, networking and knowing each other, that we don't need this community. I think
That's so
working
interesting.
backwards, yeah, just I
To
think
make
that's the
yourself
goal.
irrelevant, to make your own platform irrelevant. You never hear that from people. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I would love for it to be, why would we ever need something like this, in the future, and hopefully in the near future. I think for right now, what I honestly would like is for the members of the network to help each other um, in more and more tangible ways, because their organizations and the leagues that they're part of are really making efforts to improve their DE&I.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like what I would like to see in the near future, in the next 1 to 3 years, is for the members to be able to help each other, because society is asking for and putting pressure on this change. So we're seeing that now, where every other day it's, hey, we're looking for X role or X role, and I'm in HR or I'm a hiring manager. And I would like for it to be self-sustaining. You
Hmm.
know, I don't want to be the key piece to this network. I would like for Neha to not even need to be there for the network to do its thing, which is starting to happen now. Yes, do I want to amass more members and reach more people and inspire more people? Yes. But the way to do that, I think, is through the members and the network themselves just doing that for each other. So that's kind of, without being very exact, what my goal is. Um, yes, what I really like is for us to continue to be that professional space, that if you are looking to do anything within the South Asian community and sports, that you will come to South Asians and sports as a resource, and as a guide to help you execute on those kinds of visions that you have, or whatever have you. So I think I would really like to be a bridge or a cornerstone or a real resource for the entire world when it comes to South Asians and sports, however you want to define that.
That's super powerful. That's awesome. The other side where you're super balanced and you're starting to understand perspective and the value of almost separation and not have to push so hard, and that discipline can kind of transform in other ways. Let's say South Asian sports is doing its own thing. What's next for you? I mean, your father's a serial entrepreneur, your mother's your true north. It's almost like you're intersecting both of their messages right now, and you have so much more time ahead of you, in your life. So, what's the next project? What's going to go? What's maybe in the back of the mind, or what's going on with the vision?
That's such a great question. So I'm also a social worker, right? I graduated last year with my MSW, and my goal for it is to work with athletes on their mental health,
Mm,
their performance, their well-being. I want to be a sports social worker. That's what it's
mm,
called, but
mm-hmm.
essentially a clinician or a therapist working with athletes. That's kind of why I went back to school to get that degree. And right now, it's a great question, because right now, sometimes I'm doing South Asians in sports. I'm, working on my social work career. I have a research project that is sort of pending. It's on the transition experiences of female athletes, once they retire out of sport. I have a few different projects. And in a world where society tells you that you have to specialize and you have to be really good at one thing,
Yeah.
it can be really daunting to not have a path or a person to kind of follow in their footsteps and to be creating this. But I, just in this last week, have seen the pieces of what I'm building and creating kind of come together and converge. I don't
Love
know
it.
what that will look like,
Yeah.
and I don't really care, because I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that, for me, I know that the universe is listening and will help me align and kind of connect those dots. Uh, so I think what's next for me is to continue. What's next for me, I think it's hard to answer. I think, I'm building this, I'm continuing to build it. I think I need, well, I know one thing, and I hope you edit this. um you know I know one thing,
That
which
means
is
I'm
that
keeping it, by the way.
is that I want to be really good at my craft, and my
Uh,
craft requires hours of work, just like my forehand required hours and hours of hitting and hitting and hitting.
right.
And there's no way around that, Ford. There's no way around hard, practice. There's no way around that. So I think what's next for me is to have practice, to be a
Hmm.
clinician, to work with all different kinds of people. Yes, although I want to work with athletes, I think it's important for me to have a good broad kind of picture of people and issues and problems. So I think what's next for me is going back to the ball machine and practicing, you know, and practicing knowing my why, why am I doing this? And knowing that I don't know what exactly it's going to look like, and being okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is so freeing and so rewarding. And I'm also at a juncture in my life where I have chosen to kind of take a little step back from doing. And I say that as a mother of young children, and I would want to value this time that I have with them when they're
Mm-hmm.
young and they need me, and the privilege that I have to be able to stay at home with them for a little while and devote my time to them. And that, I think, is a whole nother topic. But I think for women who, who want to achieve a lot of things in life and have a lot of goals, but also want to experience motherhood, this is a very, very, very difficult thing to balance. And it brings up a lot of emotions.
Mm.
Society does not value motherhood. You know, the structures that we have around it, the way that, we kind of tax people for being parents,
Right.
is so apparent. So I think it requires me to constantly remind myself that I'm being intentional about how I'm living, and that I'm choosing to do this, and to really enjoy it and value it. But for it, I'm also human, and I base my self-worth off of things that we probably shouldn't in society, but I'm working on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's it's getting better as I've learned what my limits are, and kind of what drives me, and where I put my self-worth. But it's difficult. It's difficult to, quote unquote, take a step back. Although I think any parent will tell you that parenting is the hardest thing I've ever done. It's full mind, body, brain. So I think that for me, the next thing is just more self acceptance, and more leaning into uh, feeling justified and feeling um, more worthy just being a mom. And I say just being a mom because
You're
that's
right.
that's like the token phrase. I'm just a mom. Kind of working on saying I'm just a mom and being okay with that.
Uh,
But also the fact that we say just a mom. You know, I think I like to believe that I'm a feminist, but I think some of the things that feminism has done is sometimes, or some parts of the culture that we have, is to sometimes look down upon women who choose to stay at home and be with their children, because we fought so hard to be in the workplace, and
right.
trying to have equal pay. So I think I would like, to kind of take back the power, and celebrate women who are choosing to be mothers at this time, or whatever choice they make, to celebrate that, and support and encourage that. So that's where I am right now. And then knowing that I do have 10,000 hours of, quote unquote, forehands ahead of me to become a good clinician. For it, I have the lived experience. I know what it's like to attempt to do something that nobody understands, to try
Mm.
to be an elite athlete, then to leave that and to reconstruct your life again. I kind of have that lived experience. And when I went through that, I didn't have a lot of support. I didn't have people who understood what that was like, therapists, anyone who kind of understood that journey. And so I'd really like to be a resource, for athletes who are, trying to do their very best, and also know that athletics will not be their entire life,
Right.
and to understand that now, and to kind of build that base for an easier and happier transition.
There's so much intentionality behind you and your presence and your mission and your work. It's definitely going to be interesting to follow your journey and to follow all of these different projects that you have going on. And so I want to thank you again for taking the time to share with my listeners what you have going on. I know I'm excited to see what's in the works, and I'm sure my listeners are as well. So again, thank you, Neha, for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you for it. Appreciate it.
Are you ready to optimize? preFOR Humans is the evidence-based approach to optimal performance, health, and well-being. The platform collaborates globally with a variety of high-profile performers, corporate executives, elite athletes, first responders, and military personnel. preFOR Humans offers private consultation and live webinars designed for individuals, small groups, and large audiences. Visit preFORHumans.com for more information.